Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Talentrus 嘉文云台 Industry Forum 2026. Today, we're going to discuss education and employment, the changing landscape. It's my great pleasure to bring together our fabulous panelists here. I'm going to introduce each of our panelists, and I'll let them introduce themselves properly too. First of all, we have Dr. Ehssan Sakhaee. Ehssan is a senior lecturer with more than 20 years teaching experience at different universities in Australia and overseas. So he's currently leading the student leadership program in University of Canberra, and prior to that, he also worked at University of Sydney, UTS, and University of Osaka as well. Looking forward to your insights, Ehssan.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
It's also our great pleasure to have Samuel Kang with us. Sam is a senior and experienced Agile Project Manager. He has worked across both the private sector and government agencies. So I know, Sam, you've previously worked at the Department of Employment and the Workplace Relations, as well as the previous Department of Education, Skills and Employment. So I really look forward to hearing your insights. Last but not least, we have Alice Cheng with us. Alice Cheng is a senior finance executive turned into a career coach today, and she has brought her more than 20 years of finance management experience across many big brands such as PepsiCo, LVMH, Qantas, and Leon, into coaching professionals to find better roles today. And she also founded Suitorly, and she's focusing on the management of Suitorly today, as well as her Alice Cheng coaching. So welcome, Alice. Look forward to your story. We have prepared a few questions on this topic, and we say education and employment in a changing landscape, because there's a lot happening in this space. With COVID, with AI, I think the world is changing, particularly affecting the education sector and the employment sector. And Australia is probably a good example of very developed economy, very mature market. Yeah, definitely wanting to have this chat. I think it is genuinely going to benefit our professionals and students, whether they are starting right now, whether they are looking for their first or second job. So our first question is, what are the biggest changes you've seen in how organizations attract, develop, and retain talent?
A great question indeed. I think COVID was an inflection point where professionals realize, wow, this is what I really want in my career, rather than taking what is the path that was laid in front of them. And family, personal interest became very important. At the same time, I think the skill shortage right in that period also meant companies were competing for talent. And then now we've turned again, especially my line of work. And so companies can pick whoever they want, and they want the unicorn. So we have definitely seen some really drastic changes, especially I've been in the industry for 30 years working in my life. I've never seen such a change in those 30 years, not even GFC. And I think to attract talent now, it's not pure money. Because of that inflection point in COVID, people want to be trained and people want to be valued. And so I think in the future, where we're attracting the younger crowd or even the more experienced people, it's all about stacking skills, and not just in your own vertical, but how we advance people's skill set in the AI era is definitely my opinion. So if you're out there looking for an employer of choice, go beyond just money, because money does what money does. I think to future-proof your career, have a look at how they nurture talent. What kind of mentoring do you get? What kind of well-being goals do they support? Not just simply climbing that ladder.
So I would speak from an educator's point of view. For us, we train young engineers to become professional engineers and leaders in their industry. Whatever industry that might be. It could be robotics, AI, intelligent robotics. We have degrees in intelligent robotics. over the last 15 years, my focus has been on more on the human skills that can't be replaced. So AI replaces a lot of the skills, but even before AI, we had automation, we had offshoring, we had a lot of things were already happening, which required the young people, our graduates, to have more on the human skills, which are not very replaceable. Whether it's leadership skills, whether it's communication skills, problem solving, critical thinking, adaptability, being able to adapt. So I've been trying to push that into academia, and academia has generally been slow in uptaking that kind of, because when we were in university, and I think we're a very similar generation, there was nothing. Just you learn the technical skill, and then you learn all the soft skills when you get out there into industry. So we want to kind of go back and say, well, while we still have our graduates at university in higher ed or even earlier, we need to start kind of give them those skills. And we call it soft skills, but they're actually harder skills to learn. So, but it's essentially, we want emotionally intelligent, adaptive, authentic human beings who can connect and relate to people and be able to communicate effectively. So that's the main focus, and that's why we have the Leadership Academy at University of Canberra. At University of Sydney, we had the Leadership Academy. So that we started. So very much it's around just supporting our young, especially the engineers who are very left brain, very technical, to also have those soft skills. So that's where we kind of do the work.
Yeah, I guess building on what both Alice and yourself have just mentioned, I think an education, a degree, they're absolutely still relevant and required. However, I think in the modern day, we look at practical skills, practical experience. So, speaking with either high schoolers and university, almost grads, I would really, the thing that I mentioned to them is try and get as much practical experience in the industry that you'd like to do, or maybe even another industry, because sometimes if you don't know what you want to do, it's just as valuable to know what you don't want to do. Yeah, because you can change. The other thing is talking about the soft skills, or nowadays with AI, where a report or a PowerPoint, that used to be a skill that used to be required, or to beautify something, but nowadays you can do it in the press of a button. So not just the IQ, the EQ, or the empathy, and a lot of the time in my space, it's about that human or user-centered design. Gone are the days when you just build something because you assume that an organization or a government knows it. Yeah. Rather, if you speak to your end consumer, then build for them, then they will use it, and trying to make it as seamless as possible. So that's where I would kind of put the focus.
Well, thank you, Alice, Ehssan, and Sam. What you've shared is definitely resonating well with what I've seen as well in my world. So I think education today has, knowledge particularly today has a very different meaning and the value from 5-10 years ago. And if you look at the job market, particularly when people find their first, second jobs, technical skill is one thing, but the capability to build a relationship, manage a difficult stakeholder, solve a problem quickly, work cross-functionally with different teams, lead a project, those are the skills that people really need to develop, in my opinion, to succeed in the job market. And the job market today probably has a different meaning as well from what it used to be. So thank you.
Definitely echoing the others in terms of the skills we need, the soft skills, which are often hard to develop. I think definitely learning agility, but people are getting exhausted and overwhelmed by the amount of things they have to learn is what I'm seeing in my coachees. So they are told to use all the various AI tools that's been implemented on top of their day job and trying to keep up with the job market. I think from a personal well-being point of view, we have to somehow put some frameworks, and the leaders in the business will need to give direction rather than chasing the shiny objects. But definitely in my world, that learning agility and having my own personal experience switching a career of 24 years to something completely new and leaping into a world of entrepreneurship with no backup plans and, you know, eating into my saving, I know that fear is what holds people back. And I think if you just try one thing on the side, learn and find your hobby, I think like Sam said, you often find what you don't like is also a good thing as well as finding what you really are passionate about.
I'll just add something in between. In that agility space, right? I think it gets bandied around, especially in projects, in organizations. You'll hear digital transformation or transformation at all. Yeah. You know, and what I find when I speak to either execs or anyone from the mailroom to the C-suite, it's this constant pace of change. Yeah. But I think it's, if you stack them all up, then it's overbearing. Personally, and this is my view, I think it requires not just learning all of it, but a change in the mindset. If you think that this rate of change, it's only going to increase, right? It's not about, if we get over that hill, I'll be okay. Rather, that rate of change. And rather than saying, okay, I'm learning this other thing and this other term and this other jargon, but rather, regardless of whatever it's called, you actually know it now. It's just called something different in this framework, and having gone through each of those frameworks and reflecting on it, that's what I'm kind of talking about. And they all serve a purpose and they are valuable. But I really think, making it more accessible, I think is really key.
Yeah. I can add something to that. I think definitely, and what the other speakers were mentioned about well-being and being able to, I term it the self-leadership component, which includes being able to self-regulate ourselves. Because you're right, people feel overwhelmed, and we have to manage that. We have to manage overwhelm. So it's a skill that we need to learn, is how do I actually manage the overwhelm, and how do I prioritize, how do I focus on one thing at a time. And there are also attitudinal elements, and this is not really talked about, shift in attitudes. We don't learn how to allow and accept reality. We don't learn this in school. We don't learn it in our homes, in our families. So this is something we focus on. We actually have to align ourselves with the fact that things are rapidly changing. That's the reality. So the mind wants to resist, wants to complain, wants to know this is not fair, this is not right, this is not good. But we actually have to teach our young people especially, and we have to learn this ourselves, of course, because we never learned it. Align yourself with reality. I teach mindfulness. So it's one of the most key skills that we teach in our program, because we need to learn how to presence ourselves to what's happening and just be in the moment, not lost in the mind. So these are some of the things that we really need to focus on for our young people, because it's much more than just a skill, it's much more than content. It's a way of life, it's a way of dealing with complexity. So yeah, just want to add that. Thank you.
100%. Thank you. Given how deep we've jumped into those questions, I think what I'll do is I'll probably merge the next two questions together because they are kind of similar. So our next question is, how is AI changing the way people work? And in routine work, if routine work is automated, how do people develop judgment and experience?
Well, routine work has been automated for a long time. It's even long before AI. I mean, how are cars made right now? Robots build it, right? So robotics was the first wave of automation that took place. It's been for decades. And people didn't complain. Well, probably a lot of people did complain. It's like, you're going to lose your job, you know, everything's going to, we're all going to lose our jobs, everything's going to change. But people adapt. We humans adapt. We learn new skills. And I think it's no different to AI. AI is automating more jobs than ever before, absolutely. But we can adapt and build new jobs that never existed, which primarily is utilizing AI to do something far greater than any of us had been able to do it previously. So I think it is an exciting opportunity, and it does go back to attitude. Is how do we see this? Do we see it as a threat, or do we see it as an opportunity? So I think that it's definitely changing the landscape of work, but it is also creating jobs that never existed. So that's what I want to say. Anyone else?
Totally agree. And I think, if anything, it might homogenize the output from people. So if AI is generating the output, I think it'll push us to be more critical thinkers and actually have discernment. Is this right or is this wrong? So I think that's one area we talked about, that critical thinking. And in creativity, I think there'll be a great opportunity. Instead of just taking what's been outputted, maybe have a think about what else is possible. And that's where I personally think AI is not there to replace our creativity from our experiences. And we have a lot of our assets. And that's probably one thing, I think, mindset. When I coach people, they usually come to me at rock bottom because they have experienced some challenges. And if I sit there and ask them all these questions, we have a lot of assets. We don't have the, I guess, confidence to call it out and go, I am valuable. I'm a human being. I have all these experiences. I have a unique fingerprint. And I think that's one thing we can apply on top of the AI. I think in terms of teamwork, gives us more time to have fun. I mean, who's having fun at work these days? Because we are so worked up. So I think, if anything, teamwork is going to be ultra critical, where we go back to basics. I'm talking to a human being or a group of human beings. Let's get to know each other. How do we get to that common goal? Utilizing AI as an enabler, as a partner, thinking partner, doesn't replace us. So I think there are great opportunities ahead, and I built an AI platform, so I have to say.
I think you're absolutely right, you know. And if everyone uses the same 1, 2, 3 models, right? Yeah. And you're writing on the same topic. And look, even if you're using it as inspiration, everyone's going to write the same report, same essay, you know, and that kind of individual creativity, that spin. Even though you look at one topic or subject matter, the individual view that you have, I think, will be really important. To go on a different tangent, people are discussing, or I think, is AI going to replace everyone and render everyone useless, right? Is there going to be so much value created by the AI that our kids are going to be not going to have a job? I actually don't think that's going to happen, or happen right now, because you look at all the different industries. 120 years ago, one of the biggest industries was whaling for oil. Before we used to pump it out of the ground, where has that gone? That has turned into, I guess, the oil industry. There was an entire industry for horses before cars, and then the Model T car came along. And so I think there is somewhere between an evolution and a revolution in industries. And at the moment, I think we're at a turning point because there's so much uncertainty. Rather than waiting for others to speculate on the future, I think we need to take action, right? And say, why don't we build the future? It's a different mindset. Yeah? And if we do that, then we're part of that transition.
Human.
Yeah. I completely agree with what everyone has shared. Just one thing to add from my perspective. I think we've seen over the last few generations and probably since the beginning, a lot of change. Like we said, automation is not the first time we're seeing it, but it's probably the first time we're seeing it happening so fast. The speed of automation and change is completely different level from what we've seen, in history. And with what everyone has shared, I think it's how quickly we can respond to that change as a society. Because instead of, you see a change, you see invention, you see a technology advancement, and each generation will have time to respond to that, build new skills, learn new things, change the attitude towards it, and utilize that technology. Our particular challenge today is we may not have that much time to prepare ourselves, prepare our kids for the education sector, to prepare the students to do well through that change, which kind of leads to a question we have further down, but I might bring that forward a bit because it connects nicely. How do you think the education sector could work with the industry, the government, and everyone else to better prepare our students today? So if you look at, if we jump out of our own roles and functions and think as a society to prepare younger professionals today, so whoever is in university or even before that, kids today, how do we work together to better prepare them to make them more capable?
I think such an important question, and it's so much we can do. Those especially who are outside of academia can support our young people through mentorship, coaching. We've spoken about that. So in our case, at the University of Canberra, we have industry mentors who engage with our class. They're engineers. They come and talk about. They bring challenges, real challenges, and our students work in teams to solve those challenges and present it back to the industry. And they will actually be the judge. It's rather than me as an academic. These are engineers who are going to go out there and work in companies. They're not going to be academics doing a PhD. Some of them may, but most of them will be out in the industry, in the real world. So they need to get that exposure. So I think mentorship is a key factor that can help our young people. We have guest speakers coming in and sharing their experiences, so I think that exposure is so important, and it's something we missed when we were young, when we were doing our undergraduate degree. We didn't have that industry engagement to the level that we're doing today. So I think that's a really key factor to get that exposure. Yeah.
I think co-designing the curriculum, because if I look back at my education, hasn't really changed compared to my kids' education right now. And if anything, they need to learn how to manage money. They need to learn how to regulate their emotions, life skills. So perhaps if the government can sort of take on that industry experience, have a look at what do we need from a soft skills perspective and start teaching them when they're 6 and 7, rather than leaving it up to all the parents because they spent most of their life at school during that age. And then university, I look back at the accounting curriculum, exactly the same when I did it 30 years ago. Debits and credits are important. However, leadership, communication, how to build a personal brand, those things are probably far more important, especially having switched my career in my 40s. Unfortunately, most of my corporate skills have not really served me by building a business. So now at home, being a business owner, I'm teaching my kids how to manage money and run a business, set up a side hustle or a passion project, sell lemonade on the street, and just learn by doing. I think that's very important rather than sitting in a classroom.
The other thing that I would add is, and I was thinking more in a tertiary education perspective, if the curriculum is the same, okay, how can you enhance that? I mean, if we talk computer science or programming languages, right? You know, are we still teaching COBOL and C and other things? Right? No, because you have to, if you're not teaching what people are using, then you're going to be behind. And so potentially tertiary education, even secondary, you know, getting those mentors in, you know, and sharing their experience, and also, I guess, you know, co-design, human-centered design. What is it that the people, the students, need in order to actually thrive in the workplace?
I think that wraps up our session nicely. Thank you so much, everyone. Alice, Sam, Ehssan. Since we talked about employment and education, I was hoping to ask about your recent experience. What do you think about the traditional education model in universities, whether it's coping well with the changing landscape in employment? You've recently graduated, and assume you're looking for jobs in your first or second or third role, and taking these experience and look back at university education, how do you think we could better prepare our graduates? Yeah. Thank you.
So I'm a engineering graduate from UCID, right? So with a focus on intelligent information engineering. So obviously uni has taught me a lot of skills. Well, the ultimate goal is you having to use your skills practically, solving industrial problems, right? And as from an international student perspective, I feel we have an additional layer of focusing on visas and the work rights, right? And I think having a bit of exposure to what the students can expect with their working rights and visa status is very important. So I think introducing that would be a major improvement and helpful for all of the international students. And that's currently what I'm struggling with. So yeah, that is what I can say.
Brilliant. Oh, thank you so much, Vida. And that's great insight. And hopefully the universities will address that part in their future student employment programs. And thank you for sharing. Good luck with your job search.